Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Wright. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. I know I did. I hope you got outside and did something fun and enjoyed the weather, went for a walk, spent some time with your family, obviously, since that's what we're all doing. You guys did great last week. I know it's a learning curve and I know that you guys are really doing your best, and that's all I'm asking from you, okay? So today we're gonna read chapter 11 in Homer P. Figg and see what is happening with all of these characters. Let's find out. This chapter is called The Weasel Comes A-Callin'. I'm sure you can figure out who the weasel is. There's a whole other world in Mr. Brewster's basement. Must be 20 people hiding down there, and 2 babies wrapped in blankets. 2 or 3 families all on the run, looking to find a new life. On the run all the way from Maryland, with slave catchers dogging their trail. The fugitives look thin and hungry and scared. They jump at every sound from above. The squeak of the door when Mrs. Bean walks across the kitchen floor, the squeak of the floor when Mrs. Bean walks across the kitchen, a window rattling in the wind, and sad cooing of a mourning dove up in the eaves. Every noise makes them nervous and fearful. Mr. Brewster says that fear is something slaves carry with them. They won't be rid of it until they're safe across the border in Canada with nobody to snatch them back. Some of these folks have escaped more than once, only to be seized by slave catchers and taken back. Makes it worse for this particular group because their brave conductor, Samuel Reed, vanished into thin air. They figure it can happen to him, it can happen to them. If stink and smell have their way, it will. All I do is offer shelter for a night or two, Mr. Brewster explains. The real work, the dangerous work, is done by the likes of Mr. Reed. The basement is fixed up real nice with rugs on the floor and rows of sturdy bunks and plenty of food and special baffles to keep the lantern's light from shining out of the basement windows. It's better than the barn where me and Harold lived, but no matter how nice Mr. Brewster made this place, it's still a kind of dungeon, even if there are no padlocks or chains. You can feel it in the air, the people wanting to get out, to be free of this place or any place where they've got to be afraid. I would have these poor folks in my house as honored guests, but there are many who would burn us out if we did so, Mr. Brewster says, bringing me up out of the basement. Burn us to the ground they would. Thee think runaway slaves are fearful. Their fear is nothing to fear. The white man has their fear is nothing to the fear the white man has of the black. Abolitionists who preach against slavery will not let colored worshipers sit with whites in the church. They think it's unclean, that light and dark should mix. How will they get to where they are going, I ask. Some way they will get there, he says, on foot and in wagon, but mostly on foot. With slave catchers lurking, they must travel at night under the cover of darkness, especially on cloudy or moonless nights. Like this evening, for example. He doesn't say so exactly, but he means the slaves will be on the move tonight. What should I do? I ask him. Mr. Brewster sets me down in the kitchen where Mrs. Bean has put out steaming plates of beef and potatoes slathered in gravy. Thee must do whatever is true to thee, he says. It is not for me to force a thing upon thee to make thee believe as I believe. I never had such a plate of food in my life. Squint wasn't much for plates, for that matter, but what I saw in the basement was killing my appetite. Men and women and children and babies all running from those who would chain them up and buying them and selling them like cattle. Gets me thinking how much I hate it when Squint and Leach locked us up, or whipped us with his belt, or sold Harold into the army like he was something Squint owned. Get a gun, I urge Mr. Brewster. He shakes his great white head. That I cannot do. I am sworn to peace. Mrs. Bean, I say, tell him to get a gun. Mrs. Bean chuckles and gives me a sad smile. Gave up on that years ago, she said. He will not stir from his beliefs. If you won't get a gun, then tell me what to do, I ask, pleading. He sighs so deep it almost makes the windows rattle. Thee must decide, he says again, but I will say this much. It all boils down to this. A person has only two options in life, to do something or to do nothing. What's that supposed to mean? It means that if thee do nothing, thee may stay in this house. Thee will be safe and cared for and will never go hungry. Mrs. Bean will see to that. Or thee can do something. Something to help Mr. Smelt and his confederates, or something to help those who have escaped their chains. This isn't fair, Mrs. Bean admonishes him, shaking her gravy ladle. He's just a boy, and a scrawny one at that. I know, says Mr. Brewster, sounding regretful, but boys are fighting this cruel war. Boys are enslaved, and boys own slaves. None may escape. All must decide. If you won't get a gun, then I'll get me one, I asked, begging. There are no guns in this house. Not for thy purpose. I shake my head. Comes to me that Jebediah Brewster is crazy, and that's like God himself being crazy. As crazy as the plague and pestilence, as crazy as a tree that fell on my father, and my dear mother dying so young, and Squint being so mean. I can't stand another minute of this, with all the questions in my head, trying to decide things that are better left to God and Mr. Brewster. Where are you going? Mrs. Bean calls out when I get up from the table. What are you doing? What are you going to do? But I'm running out the door without an answer, running into the sooty blue darkness where Smelt is waiting. Smelt with his knife and probably a gun too, and I've got no idea what to do. No idea at all, except I know one thing. I can't do nothing. Nothing is not an option. I like that. I like that little theme that's running there, that you really have two options, to do something or to do nothing. And he's saying, I can't do nothing. These people need me. And so, although he doesn't really know what he's going to do yet, he knows he has to do something. And I think as we sit here in our own circumstances, we may not know exactly what to do with ourselves with all of this, what seems like craziness, even as Homer has said, we have to do something. And the one thing we can do is stay home and make sure that we're safe and that everybody else is safe too. Y'all have a great afternoon. I miss you. I'll see you soon. Bye.